1 Corinthians chapter 13 is where we're going to be at tonight. But again, this is the month of love. It is believed that an English poet named Geoffrey Chaucer was the first to record St. Valentine's Day as a day of romantic celebration. It happened in his 1375 poem. 1375, incredible. It's called Parliament of Fowls, writing, "For this was sent on St. Valentine's Day, when every fowl cometh there to choose his mate." And the whole idea behind that, he was writing this romantic poem, but he chose to talk about birds because it was believed that birds found their mate in the middle of February. And so he was the first one to use that as an example of this romantic love and what we often celebrate as Valentine's Day today. Valentine's Day is huge business, as all of you know. Some of you may be desperately trying to save up your nickels and pennies because you want to go out and buy something for someone special. Last year, Americans alone. Now, Valentine's Day is celebrated throughout the world in lots of different countries. Not in every country, but in many different countries. And last year, Americans alone spent approximately $24 billion on Valentine's Day gifts. It is actually second only to Christmas in greeting card giving. Only on Christmas do we send out or give more cards. Valentine's Day is a close second. So it's a big deal, right? It's a big deal for everybody. It's a big deal for me. I like to give all of my family members some sort of Valentine's something, a card. I usually will include some candy. Last year I printed out these hilarious little cards, but I give them to everybody, obviously my wife, my girls, and even my son gets one from me. It may sound girly to you, but I dare you to say that to my face, okay? But everybody in my house gets one. I love giving out that kind of stuff, and that's usually not anything too expensive, just cheapy little things, but just trying to remember to do that. The Catholic Church recognizes at least three different saints. These would be when the Catholic Church says saints, it means Catholics who have already died, and they hold a special place. But three different people named Valentine or Valentinus, all of whom were martyred. All three of these. One who performed marriages in defiance of then Emperor Claudius II. Claudius II said it's best that young men not marry so that they can go to war without any restrictions. And it is believed that this priest was still in secret marrying young couples that were in love, of course. And he was subsequently killed by Claudius for doing so. Another named Saint Valentine of Terni, who, like the first, was killed by Claudius. And then there was a third who was killed by Rome, supposedly for helping prisoners escape from prison, obviously. And so the thought that he was a loving person or a loving Catholic priest, and he was helping people escape, is the idea there. Some believe that St. Valentine's Day started with a pagan celebration called Lupercalia, which happened on February 15th. In which lots of things happened, but one of the main things was they would sacrifice a goat and a dog, it said. They would then take strips of hide from the goat, dip it in blood, and this group of priests, believe it or not, Catholic priests, would walk around gently slapping the single women in the women in the they would gently slap the women in town. And it was believed the women welcomed this. It was believed that by being touched by this bloody goat skin, that would make them more ready for children. I'll say it as nice as I can. It is believed that part of that Lupercalia festival, that they would also, the single women during the day would take their names, put them in a big pot, and that all the single men would come through and pick a name, and that would, they would be a match for that year. It was obviously not a very holy festival. It was considered a fertility festival, so not something that we want to obviously take part in. What about Cupid? What about Cupid, that chubby, naked cherub that shows up on Valentine's decorations, shooting his arrows of love at unsuspecting lovers? He has roots in Greek mythology as the Greek god of love named Eros. Thus the name, or the bow and arrows. We'll talk about Eros here in just a minute, but today, St. Valentine's Day is, whether it started as a sacred holiday or a secular holiday, whatever, today it is generally mainly celebrated as a secular holiday. Obviously, we as Christians and as a church, we don't celebrate St. Valentine's Day as if it's a holy day or anything. I'm sure that many of us pass out things to friends or family members, or you might receive things, but it's largely secular today. Well, in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, this is the go-to chapter on love. And I was looking and exploring some other chapters and passages, but I just kept coming back to 1 Corinthians 13 because this is it. This is the place where we want to be as far as love is concerned. And what we want to do tonight is, as we head into this so-called month of love and head closer to Valentine's Day, we want you to be aware. We want you to be in the know and understand what it is that you're doing and taking part in and all of those kinds of things, okay? This is going to be the love test, 1 Corinthians chapter 13. And you are going to see, now I totally ripped this off from our senior pastor, John Miller, but we'll just pretend like it's mine, okay? Love's value in the first three verses, verses 1 through 3. The second set, verses 4 through 7, is love's virtue. And then finally, love's victory in verses 8 through 13. And I do need to mention this, that when Paul first wrote this, or I'm sorry, I shouldn't say when he first wrote it, when he wrote it, it's part of a section. Some of you went through 1 Corinthians with us. And this is part of a section that is actually dealing with tongues and the gifts of the Spirit. And people were kind of arguing in the church over who had what gifts and which ones were better and who could speak in tongues and all this craziness. And Paul was trying to get them, the Corinthians, to understand, listen, we need to love one another regardless of what kind of gifts you have or talents or abilities or what you might possess. Love is the ultimate goal, and we always want to love each other. Now, I do believe that it's safe. We're going to use this and apply it to our Valentine's holiday that's coming up. And we might say, well, that's taking it out of context. And I suppose you could make an argument for that. However, these attributes that we are going to see about love transcend situations and holidays. Transcend means that what we get here in chapter 13 is a wonderful description of genuine love. It's the real deal. And those characteristics, love doesn't change. It doesn't matter what situation it's in. Love doesn't change. Today there's a popular saying, love is love. Well, what exactly do they mean by that? I think that many of the people that say that have the wrong idea about what love is in the first place. And we'll take a look at that. But look at this in verse 1, which is love's value, verses 1 through 3, where Paul writes, though I speak with tongues of men and of angels, so I might have the gift of tongues, and I might be able to speak some heavenly language, whether it's the gift of tongues of men or of angels. Maybe I'm able to speak some heavenly language between me and the angels, or I'm able to communicate, or I have this special ability. He says, you may have those things, but have not love. Then he says, I have become sounding brass or a clanging cymbal. A sounding brass and a clanging cymbal are not things that we welcome. We might bang the cymbal here, and it might be a welcome thing as long as it is part of a drum roll, right? As long as it's part of the drums. If it's just somebody banging the cymbal, after a couple of times we're ready to bang their head, right? Knock it off, because it's loud and it's annoying. And what Paul starts out saying, telling us about love's value, he says, listen, you may have this wonderful gift of tongues, and you may be able to speak to the angels or speak this heavenly language, but if you do not have love in the mix, then really All it is annoying, like sounding brass or a clanging cymbal. So he right away tells us love's got to be in the mix. Whatever we're doing, love's got to be in the mix. Verse 2. He says, and though I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, those are things that, some of us, man, we might hunger for. Like, I just want to know all the prophecy. I want all the inside info. Paul says, if you have all of those things, and he says in verse 2, and though I have all faith, so that I could remove mountains, but have not love, I am nothing. I may possess some wonderful abilities. The ability to prophesy and share God's word in a special way, but if I am doing it without love, then really I am nothing. I'm not accomplishing anything. And then in verse 3, and though I bestow all my goods to feed the poor, and though I give my body to be burned, that's the idea is there that you would give your life as a martyr. He says, but have not love, it profits me nothing. I might decide that I'm going to sell all of my goods and I'm going to serve the poor and live with the homeless, and I'm going to even give my body as a sacrifice and allow myself to be martyred. But if I'm not doing it with love, then none of those things profit me anything. So we get love's value there, that without this love that Paul is talking about, that the things that we do, or the things that we have, the things that we want to do for others, they really do not accomplish anything. They have no value. Because without that love, they have no value. It is that love that gives it all of its value. It's very easy if I'm a millionaire or a billionaire, or we have trillionaires nowadays, to hand a bunch of money to some needy people. That's fine, but that's easy. It's here's a check, or here's a bunch of money or whatever. But to give the money and or to get down on your hands and knees and serve those people with a loving heart, now that's something different. So Paul is telling us there in the first 3 verses that this love has a value. But let me ask you a question. What kind of love is he talking about? Now again, today there's a popular thought that love is love. Somebody knows what I'm talking about. The idea is that love is love. Oh, it doesn't matter. And generally speaking, that is part of the homosexual community, the LGBTQ plus community. And they say, hey, it doesn't matter what you are, what you look like, who you are, what gender you are, just as long as you love, then, it's fine. But it is very important for you and I to understand something here as we get into the remaining verses, even those first 3 verses. What kind of love was Paul talking about? We might go, well, I thought there was only one kind of love. What are you talking about? Well, let me ask you a question. How many of you love French fries? I'll put my hand up first, man. I love me some French fries. Okay? How many of you love your grandparent? All right. Sometimes? Man, that was Jesse, YouTube. Okay? Same. But we certainly do not love French fries and our grandparent the same, do we? It's not on the same level. It's not the same kind of love. It better not be, right? It better not be. How many of you love French fries? Yes. How many of you love your pet at home? Oh, my baby, right? But you certainly don't love the French fries and your pet on the same level. There are different kinds of love. Now, let me share several things with you right now. What kind of love is it? What is Paul talking about? And as we head into this month of love, what kind of love are we talking about? Let me share. Now, there are several different ancient Greek words that describe different kinds of love. Which one is being used here? We're going to find out. But let me go through some of these with you right now. Phileo was one of the words for love, and that is a brotherly love. You ever heard of Philadelphia? The city of brotherly love. That's what that means, Philadelphia. The city of brotherly love. This kind of love encompasses the love shared between, of course, brothers, family, friends, intimate family members, and is characterized by loyalty and trust. This was the kind of love that the writer of Hebrews chapter 13 verse 1 mentioned. Use that word, phileo. The next one is the one that is obviously very popular today, eros. Remember Cupid, that he had his roots in the Greek god of love called eros. Well, eros is a sensual love. It is love of the body only. Passion, lust, sexual attraction. It is where we get our word erotic from. Ancient Greeks considered this to be a very dangerous love because it is easy to lose control of. There's another one, storge. Storge is a family love. Storge refers to the unconditional love that parents have for their children and that children can have for their parents. It is a protective, family-based love that embodies approval, sacrifice, and acceptance. Sounds pretty good, right? Romans 1:31 and 2 Timothy 3:3, they both mention this kind of love. There's another, ludus. It is a non-committed love. This is a playful, flirtatious, non-committed love. This is what we would consider an easy breezy kind of love. It is, many of you will be familiar with this probably because you've heard about it. You've never experienced this yourself, but having a crush on someone and then acting on it. It is in the infatuated phase that this kind of love occurs in the early stages of a romantic relationship. That's very, very popular today. Here's another one. Pragma. Pragma. It's another word for love. This is a practical, long-term love. This is a love that looks long-term. Pragma is a love that is seen in many long-term marriages and friendships. It is built on commitment, endurance, companionship, and sharing similar hopes for the future, which includes things like building a family and putting down roots. Doesn't sound like a bad kind of love at all, right? It's a good kind of love. There's another here. Philatia. Philatia. This is a self-love. This is connected with self-worth, confidence, self-esteem. But this is another dangerous one because too much of this philatia and too much of this self-love can breed self-obsession and self-superiority. This is very popular today, right? You just got to love yourself. And what they mean is worship yourself, be obsessed with yourself, make yourself number one. And then there is one last one. We're all familiar with this, or many of us are, and that is agape. Agape. This is an unconditional, self-sacrificial love. It is a one-of-a-kind love. It is empathetic. It is selfless. It's a selfless love for others. It's a love for strangers and the less fortunate. And this one, unlike storge, doesn't depend on familiarity. But this is a love that is freely given to all. For God so loved the world. He just gave his love to everyone, to the entire world. And this is the kind of love that is used in 1 Corinthians chapter 13. When he says without, if I'm speaking or doing whatever and I don't have love, I'm just a clanging cymbal. What he's saying there is if you do not have an unconditional self-sacrificial love. Now the Bible talks about some of these different kinds of love, but agape love is a godly love. Agape love is the love that is always at the top. It is always the kind of love that you and I as Christians want to attain to. We want an unconditional self-sacrificial love. That's the kind of love that we want to learn to love people with. And that is the kind of love that Paul uses here as he's describing this love. Now let's go on to our next section, which is love's virtue in verses 4 through 7. And we will see several things here. We're going to have a bit of a comparison. He begins by telling us that love, this agape, suffers long and is kind. So it suffers long. Some people say, well, that just means patient. And it certainly can mean patient, because a good godly love is patient, but it says that it suffers long. That would give us the idea or the clue that it's able to bear weight for a long period of time. Sometimes you have people that, get on your nerves. They're annoying. And sometimes those people are Christians. I call them sandpaper saints. They're rough around the edges, and God actually uses them to sand you down a little bit, all of your rough edges. But love suffers long, okay? But also it is kind. That's a true kind of love. That's a good kind of love. Love suffers long and is kind. But then he tells us some negatives. He says, love does not envy. It does not envy. A false love envies. Now, some of you may remember there's a difference between jealousy and envy. Jealousy is not always a bad thing. God is jealous. He's a jealous God. Jealousy is not wanting to lose something that you possess. That can be a good thing. A husband and a wife should be jealous for their spouses. You don't want to lose that. Okay? Envy is wanting something that someone else has and wanting them not to have it. Okay? It's a sinful desire. False love is always going to be envious, or a true love is never going to be envious. A false love will be envious. This false love also is going to be boastful. He says their love does not parade itself, and then he said is not puffed up. That means arrogant. So a false love is going to be envious. It's going to be boastful. It's going to be arrogant. Okay? Verse 5, does not behave rudely. A true love is not going to be rude. If it's rude, then it's a false kind of love. It's one of those other kinds of love, maybe, if it's even love. He goes on in verse 5 to say it does not seek its own. It's not selfish. It's not selfish. A true love is not selfish. A false love is going to be selfish. He goes on in verse 5 to say it is not provoked. That means irritable. A true godly love is not going to be irritable. It's not going to always be moody. Now, certainly all of us get moody at times. I get moody plenty of times. But it's not always going to be like that. Some people seem to always be irritable. And you're afraid to talk to them because, man, they're going to bite my head off. Well, that's not a genuine love. That's not a real love. That's not a good and godly love. What's next? True love is never resentful. It thinks no evil there in verse 5. Thinks no evil. A genuine love thinks no evil. In verse 6, he says that a real love is not going to glory in wrongdoing. Not going to glory in a wrongdoing. When I was much, much younger, I had some older cousins that I was hanging out with, and I was in junior high at the time. Believe it or not, I was in junior high in the past. It was the 1900s, but I was in junior high. And I had some older cousins that were already in high school and doing some pretty bad things, and I was learning from the best and starting to do those bad things, and I can remember them encouraging me to do bad things, and when I did bad things, they would do this very thing. They would glory in wrong. These were not family members that genuinely loved me. He goes on. He says it does not rejoice in iniquity, and then we go back over to the other side, the true side, but what good, godly, agape love does is that it rejoices in the truth. It rejoices in the truth. That's what we want. Verse 7. Here are some more things that true agape does, that agape love does. Verse 7, it bears all things. What that means is that your secret is safe with that person. You have someone that loves you, and you are able to share the intimate details of your heart or your life, and you know that that individual is not going to take those and go spread them all over the place and say, well, I don't want to gossip, but let me just tell you about Zeke. I mean, just so you can pray for him. They're not going to do that. They're not going to share those intimate details. By the way, Zeke hasn't shared any intimate details with me. Evidently, he doesn't love me. Just kidding. I know he does. Zeke, I know you do, buddy. Right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Bears all things. Another thing that agape does is it believes all things. Gives the benefit of the doubt.
Hey, Chris,
Sir.
it says gold on the ceiling.
Believes all things. That means that it gives the benefit of the doubt. Do you have those people in your life? Maybe a parent. They always give you the benefit of the doubt. Man, that was my mom when my mom was alive. Always giving me the benefit of the doubt. But I was consistent. I always proved her wrong. Bears all things. Believes all things. Agape love hopes all things. Okay? Did I miss that one? Believes all things? I think I did. Endures all things. Sorry about that. Hopes. It's always hopeful. Agape love is always hopeful. And then agape love endures. That means it's going to last. And we're going to see love's victory here in just a minute. But we've seen so far love's value. That what we do, what we say, the things that, the abilities or gifts that we have, if they are not motivated by an agape love, an unconditional self-sacrificial love, then really they're worthless. We've seen love's virtue here, all of the virtues of a good and godly love over there on the true side. Verse 8 says, love never fails. Love never fails. But whether there are prophecies, they will fail. Whether there are tongues, they will cease. Whether there is knowledge, it will vanish away. Again, Paul was writing this in the context of gifts, and he was telling them, listen, you can have all the gifts you want, but if you don't have genuine love, they really don't mean anything. But this is another characteristic, that love never fails. Skip with me down to verse 13. And now abide faith, hope, love, these three, but the greatest of these is love. That's agape love. Notice what a strong statement that is in verse 13. This is love's victory here. That faith, hope, and love, these three, that they all abide. That they live together in harmony, faith, hope, and love. That they're lasting, faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. You know, our faith and our hope, one of these days, will end. What a strange thought. Because we're always pumping faith. You got to have faith, and you got to hope. But one of these days, we will no longer need faith and no longer need hope, because we will be face to face with God. And so we'll see him there. And we'll no longer need to hope that things are, that we're going to get there, or things are going to turn out well, because we'll be there and things will have turned out well. But love, it says here, but the greatest of these is love. We will always need love. We'll always need love. Listen, what I'm going to do at this point, now what I've given you is, I've given you a list of love's attributes, its characteristics, its virtues. And so as you head into this month of love, many of you are going to receive a Valentine, maybe from a mom or dad or family member. But it might be from a certain special someone at school or on your team or in class. And what I want for you to do, you've got a list of what genuine love looks like and what the false thing looks like. But what I want to do right now as we finish is I want to give you some questions. I want to give you some questions. Somebody, let's say that somebody approaches you this month and they say, hey, I want you to be my Valentine. And they bring you a flower or a balloon, or they've got some special card, or, however some special note, whatever they want to do. Listen, we as Christians, I think, in my opinion, this is my opinion, I think it's okay to celebrate Valentine's Day, give out things. I don't have a problem with that. But we do, you do, we do need to guard our hearts. And I'm going to help you with that right now. This is the love test. I've got a few questions for you to ask. Okay? Number one, let me ask you a question. Who does your heart belong to? Okay? Does that mean time's up? What does that mean? Does that mean that Sarah objects? What is it? Oh. You know what happened? I could tell, I'm sorry. I could tell you what happened. Sarah's like, because she's got her pen in her hand, and Sarah's like, I'm about to test my boyfriend right now. Like, what's up? What okay? She got so excited, she hit that thing. Okay, let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a series of questions here. I've got a few questions for you. Someone's trying to attract you or attract your love or get a hold of your heart. Let me ask you, here's the first question. Who does your heart belong to? If your heart belongs to God, then you probably should ask Him if it's okay to give it away to somebody else. Does your heart belong to God? If it belongs to God, then before you go and give it to some oily-faced, cheap-smelling chump, ladies, who does your heart belong to? If it belongs to God, then you need to ask God if it's okay to give your heart to somebody else. Guys, same thing. Okay? She comes with her nappy hair. Who does your heart belong to? Okay? I know. Here's the next one. Here's the next one. Let me ask you a question. Here's another question. How much does your heart cost? How much does your heart cost? How much does your heart cost, and are you willing to lower the price?
It's priceless.
Here's what I mean. Here's what I mean. Joaquin, other people, do you have standards? And do you say, you know what, my heart belongs to the Lord, but then some guy comes along and he's a smooth talker and whatever else, and then all of a sudden you're willing to just lower the price on your heart and give yourself away cheaply? Ladies and guys. Is that what you're willing to do? How much does your heart cost? How much is it worth? Here's another one. There's another one. Is he, listen, this is he or she. This is no like he, she. Okay? That's not what I'm saying. Is he or she even a Christian? If they're not a Christian, push it along. It's a waste of time. It's no good. It's never going to be okay. Here's another one. Okay? What is their motive? In attempting to attract your attention and in an attempt to get your admiration, what are they motivated by? Especially if the individual does not know you. Why are they trying to give you their love and they don't even know you? What is motivating them? Here's another one. Here's another one. What's their goal? What is their goal? What's their goal? In wanting to attract your attention and your love by giving you some item for Valentine's Day or whatever, this poem or whatever they do, what are they attempting to do in the long term? There's another one. Another one. What are they expecting from you? They've given you something. What are they expecting? Because love, agape love, and you understand, you know what real love is. It's an unconditional, self-sacrificial love. That means that it is a giving love, not a taking love. And young ladies, and I can even speak to the young men, to both of you, you do not owe that person anything. Nothing. You don't owe them anything. So because they gave you something, does that mean now they're expecting something else from you? You don't owe them anything. These are questions that you can take and you evaluate. Because Pastor Chris isn't right there to go, no, what are you giving her? No, go. Go. No, right? I'm not there. Right? cheerleaders aren't there to say, no, no. Keep moving. So I'm giving you tools that you can take with you as people begin to share their love and admiration for you, and oh, you're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And it's like, you saw me for the first time last week. What are you talking about? Like, what are you talking about? We know what genuine love is. Listen, a Bible teacher named Warren W. Wiersbe said this. He said, the most important part of you is the part that only God can see. And that is what the enemy is trying to steal from you. And it's going to come in all different shapes and sizes, and you got to be on your guard. Let's pray. Father, thank you so much.